how much assumption are we prepared to play with? Yeah, and, you know, look at that. I'm thinking about that door could be, as I say, my first line of defence or one of the first lines of defence within a whole building. If I can't self-evacuate quickly, or if I can't evacuate myself, maybe in those golden minutes.
Sure.
And maybe the building has a stay-put fire plan anyway in it, yeah? So all of those things. Ask an end user to say, are you really happy with this product, which we're not really sure what it is, and we're not really sure what people have done to it over its time. And I'm afraid, look, there's no even marking on it to tell me who made this. You know what, Chris, I hear a lot of people, and I'm pleased to say less people saying this to me now, but still an occurrence, where they say, well, Hannah, looks like a fire door, smells like a fire door, someone's screwed a fire door, keep shut sign on it.
Must be a fire door.
Someone may have come along sometime in its history and chucked some intumescent seals in the frame. How do you really know unless you've got, number one, marks of traceability, but the marks of traceability, don't think about them in isolation. It's that whole paperwork trail, isn't it, Chris? So we've talked about that 6-month window. Span that over 30 years. I want to know everything that's happened to that door. And sorry to be really boring, but I've done quite a lot of work in this area, yeah? And I can tell you that when I've looked at existing buildings and their fire door history, to say it's scant is a really understatement. I looked at 400 risk assessments, Chris. Less than a handful had anything to do with fire doors. They told me, and those handfuls, they told me when they'd had fire door refurbishment, but there was no backup documentation to tell me what products had been selected, who installed it, who specified it. So all of a sudden your paperwork trail falls down. So if you're a fire door inspector, though, sorry, just let me play this through a bit.
Sure.
Like, are you going to put your neck on the block on a load of assumptions that you can't evidence?
That was really where my question was going. When do you say, that's fine, it smells like a fire door, so it must be a fire door, it's got a sign on it? Or do you say, I'm sorry, I'm not signing that off? Regulation 10 now came out earlier this year, requires quarterly checks or annual checks as a minimum on residential buildings for common area doors.
Efforts.
To best efforts, yeah.
maybe
okay.
I've phrased that wrong.
Well, yeah, no, it's something.
But better than, yeah.
And the problem is somebody signing that off, a responsible person is saying, yes, that inspection was fine. It smells like a fire door. So what should they be doing?
If you can't find a very full, and once you've scrutinised it with no holes in it, history of that door, to be able to assure yourselves and your stakeholders that door system is still fit for purpose, you're left with a shadow of a doubt, aren't you? You're left, and how much can you assume, Chris? So my backstop position would be, well, I'm sorry, there's risk here, or there is an amount of risk. And risk, remember, risk is not just about fire door, it's the building, the people that use, all of those things. But let's say we recognise a risk, yeah? I'd say, well, you need to put a new system in there. Because the other thing, Chris, if I haven't done invasive maybe inspections, I'm not going to know what the lineal gap seal's doing anyway. So there's just an example of one of the bits of unknown info that I might have. You're probably going to turn to me, aren't you, Chris, and say, well, Hannah, you're a fire door manufacturer. Of course you're going to say rip it out and put in new product, yeah? But Chris, if I may, I'm just going to step out of my role, my professional role, and step into the shoes of an end user of one of our products or anybody's products, yeah? Let's just say, as an end user, I live in an apartment, a flat, a dwelling somewhere. That's in an old building. Let's just use a 1960s tower block as an example, maybe. Maybe let's say that I've got additional needs. I can't operate, got arthritis or something, mobility, cognitive needs. I've also got family that come round to my flat. I've also got carers that have to come in and see me. So I'm just going to jump into those shoes at the moment, if I may. So then, Chris, I'm going to turn the question around. How much risk would you then be prepared to accept if you were the end user? How much assumption are we prepared to play with? Yeah, and, look at that. I'm thinking about that door could be, as I say, my first line of defence or one of the first lines of defence within a whole building. If I can't self-evacuate quickly, or if I can't evacuate myself, maybe in those golden minutes.
Sure.
And maybe the building has a stay-put fire plan anyway in it, yeah? So all of those things. Ask an end user to say, are you really happy with this product, which we're not really sure what it is, and we're not really sure what people have done to it over its time. And I'm afraid, look, there's no even marking on it to tell me who made this? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, we actually don't know whether there's some whacking great big holes behind the architrave because we haven't had a look.
But fire doors, new fire doors are quite expensive. It's a lot to change all of those fire doors.
Yeah.
We need to be absolutely confident that they aren't fire doors, that they aren't going to serve a function.
Yeah, so you get into some quite interesting points, don't you, Chris, where if you can't verify something via a paperwork trail, are we down this route of having to pull a product out of a building, going and testing it, trying to make some kind of decision based on just one test? Sounds like this is shaky ground to me, doesn't it, if you're the person that's putting your neck on the block? And Chris, if I'm to be honest with you, I'm like, I really respect the fact about money. Yeah, these things are expensive. I'm afraid, like, what's an acceptable level of risk? And that depends on scenario, it depends on demographic, it depends on building. But ultimately, people that are legally responsible duty holders for other people's safety need to be considering, well, are you going to stand next to it and put your name to it? Oof, not me. Look at the culture that we've got in the construction industry. Yeah? We have got decades and decades of risk being pushed up and down the supply chain. No one wants to touch it. Nothing to do with me, Gov. Yeah? But the reality is, people have to understand they've got these responsibilities. They have to stand up. And Chris, not just for standing up for like, oh, I work in the fire door industry now. I work for whoever. I put these products in the market. I need to be thinking about, can I satisfy myself that in 15 years' time I have done absolutely everything to assure the safety of others?
Hannah, we talked through the scenario of you being a resident in one of these buildings and what to do with these older fire doors. I want to play on that a little bit further, and you're now wearing two hats. One as one of these residents and also as the group technical director of a major door manufacturer.
Well, I've got to live somewhere, Chris. Yep.
There's a massive, as far as I can see, disconnect between those two personas. Should there be? Is there benefit in closing it? And if so, what can be done to close that? And basically the question is, how can we minimise the distance between residents and fire door manufacturers?
So, how sure is sure? Chris, we're talking about this example of like a refurbished building, an existing building where the fire doors have been in there for some time. If I can't really verify that fire door system is everything that it should be, it's been manufactured properly, it's backed up with test evidence, it's backed up with third-party certification, it's been made under factory production control, it's got traceability on it, I've got a recorded history of everything that's been done to that door throughout its lifetime, and its lifetime could be quite long. If I'm the person with my neck on the block, and I mean that legally, of course, but I also mean that from a moral and ethical point of view, if I've got somebody else's safety in my hands and I'm the decision maker on it, am I really going to allow a shadow of doubt with something that is so important, someone's life, someone's well-being? I don't think I am. So how sure is sure? Chris, I know you're going to say to me, well, as a manufacturer, of course you're going to say rip them out and put in brand new ones, all fully singing, dancing systems. I accept your comment, Chris, but let me just step out of my shoes for a minute there and step into the shoes of a resident, the end user, someone that's going to use this. And, that fire door, let's face it, in an emergency, it really could be one of my first lines of defence, particularly if I'm supposed to stay put in the building, or particularly if I wasn't able to evacuate myself in that golden safe window of minutes. So let's jump into the shoes of that and pose ourselves the question is, like, so what degree of risk am I happy that my landlord accepts on my behalf for my safety? Well, my answer is 0, Chris. So, think about it. I might be a manufacturer sitting at one end of this web, the end user's at the other. But put yourself in the shoes of your end user, truly understand their needs, their concerns, respond to that. Yeah, and that's that gift that we've been talking about. We can meaningfully improve.
The message, the overriding message I'm getting, which I've known for a long time, is that fire doors are complex animals, but often get commoditized because it's just a door, isn't it? It just needs to block the hole up. And I've always thought...
Oh, Chris, you're on dangerous ground.
That's not my opinion.
No, keep it coming.
I've always thought that we massively underestimate the importance and complexity in fire doors. I'm not asking a question. That's a statement.
What's made me laugh, Chris, was I was thinking about a boss of mine 15 years ago who who had that thing. It's just a door. Yeah. We'll put it like that. He got pretty angry at that time. But Chris, I can tell you in more recent memory, someone told me to chill out about fire doors, and you can imagine that didn't go down well either. But you're right. People do think, do you really think about the doors in your home? I mean, maybe me and you do, because we think about fire doors quite a lot. Okay, fine. But does everyone really think about them? They're just something that you move through. They should be functional. They should not get in your way. If they start to get in your way, what do people do? Oh, they start to wedge them open so that they're not a problem to them. So there's a design engineering glitch in itself, correct, isn't there? So yes, awareness that these are okay, we've called them safety critical products. We already know they're on the safety critical list. But it's the culture, the mindset that needs to change. Chris, to give you a little example, a few months ago I had to go down on site to visit a client who was having some problems getting signed off with their installation. Yeah. I'm merrily watching a carpenter stand there and cut off the top edge of a door. Yeah, when I said, "Oh, you're going to lose the traceability if you do that," he said, "Hannah, I've been installing doors for 40 years. I think I know what I'm doing." It's that cultural change piece which is so important. So we talk about mindset here, we talk about cultural change, and that's where the fire door industry, that we need to move quickly to that. And we can't stand there waiting for somebody to tell us what to do.